You might think happiness comes from a perfectly behaved child, a smooth trip to the supermarket. You might think successful parenting means avoiding tantrums at all costs. But what if I told you that those very tantrums, those moments of utter chaos, are actually fertile ground for cultivating resilience, both in your child and yourself? Picture yourself in the supermarket aisle. Your child, overwhelmed and exhausted, suddenly erupts. Screams pierce the air. Demands echo off the shelves. Heads turn. Judgments flash. Your face burns. Your carefully constructed image of the perfect parent crumbles before your eyes. In that moment, your immediate instinct might be to control the situation, to silence the screams, to restore order. But what if, instead, you paused? What if you recognized this not as a personal failing, but as a human moment? A wave of emotion crashing over a small being still learning to navigate the world. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control, our own reactions. You cannot control your child's emotions. You cannot control the judgment of strangers, but you can control your response. You can choose to meet the chaos with calm, the anger with understanding, the frustration with patience. This isn't about permissive parenting. It's about recognizing that emotions are neither good nor bad. They simply are. It's about guiding your child through the storm, teaching them to weather the waves, showing them, through your own example, how to respond with virtue and wisdom. You realize this tantrum is not a reflection on your worth as a parent. It is an opportunity to practice what you believe, to accept what you cannot change, to find peace in the present moment, and to guide your child towards resilience, one tantrum at a time. The only opinion that matters is your own, and you know you are acting in virtue and not for praise. You might believe that keeping your cool during a child's meltdown makes you a good parent. You might think that emotional regulation is about suppressing negative feelings, but the Stoics offer a different perspective, a more powerful approach. It's not about suppression, it's about transformation. Imagine, you are home. Your child is frustrated, struggling with a task, a puzzle, homework, anything. Their frustration escalates into anger. Tears flow. Words sting. You feel your own patience wearing thin. The natural response is often to react, to scold, to dismiss, to try to fix the problem immediately. But the Stoics invite you to a different path. They invite you to find virtue in the chaos. Virtue, in this context, isn't about being perfect. It's about striving for wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance in the face of adversity. It's about recognizing that this moment, this struggle, is an opportunity to practice those virtues. You realize that your child's emotions are their own. You cannot control them, but you can control your reaction. You choose to respond with patience, with empathy, with a calm presence. You model the very emotional regulation you hope to instill in your child. This isn't always easy. There will be moments when your own emotions threaten to overwhelm you. But in those moments, remember the Stoic principle. Focus on what you can control. You can control your thoughts, your actions, your response. You can choose to find virtue in the chaos. You might think that protecting your child from every hardship is the ultimate expression of love. You might believe that constant intervention is the key to their success. But the Stoics challenge this notion, offering a path of guidance rather than overbearing protection. Imagine your child facing a challenge, a difficult school project, a social conflict with friends, a setback in their chosen activity. Your instinct might be to swoop in, to fix the problem, to shield them from the discomfort of failure. This is helicopter parenting, hovering anxiously, intervening at every turn. But the Stoics invite you to consider the long-term consequences. By constantly removing obstacles, are you truly helping your child, or are you robbing them of the opportunity to develop resilience, problem-solving skills, and the ability to cope with adversity? Stoic guidance, on the other hand, is about empowering your child to navigate challenges themselves. It's about providing support and encouragement, but also allowing them to experience the natural consequences of their actions. You realize that failure is not the opposite of success. It is a stepping stone towards it. You recognize that true strength is not found in avoiding hardship, but in overcoming it. You shift your focus from protecting your child from every potential pitfall to equipping them with the tools they need to navigate the inevitable bumps in the road. You might strive to shield your children from disappointment, believing a perfect world is a happy world. You might think it's your job to smooth every path, erase every failure. But the Stoics propose a radical alternative. Amor fati, a love of fate. Imagine your child pours their heart into an activity, a sport, an art project, only to face defeat, rejection, or simple disappointment. The impulse to console, to minimize the pain, is powerful. But what if, instead, you guided them to embrace the outcome, not as a tragedy, but as an integral part of their journey? What if you helped them see the lessons embedded within the setback, the opportunity for growth, the chance to refine their skills and character? Amor fati is not about passive resignation. It's not about accepting injustice or failing to strive for improvement. It's about acknowledging that life is filled with both joy and sorrow, success and failure, and that both are essential for growth. You realize that disappointment is inevitable, and that trying to shield your children from it is ultimately futile. You understand that true resilience is not about avoiding hardship, but about learning to navigate it with grace and wisdom. You teach them to love what true is, while simultaneously striving to become the best version of themselves. You might believe that social media is a harmless tool for connection, a fun way to share experiences. You might think that likes and followers are simply a reflection of popularity, a harmless metric. But the Stoics urge caution, a mindful approach to external validation. Imagine your child, immersed in the digital world, meticulously crafting their online persona, anxiously awaiting the approval of their peers. They measure their worth by the number of likes, the comments they receive, the perceived popularity of their posts. You see them becoming increasingly dependent on external validation, their self-esteem fluctuating wildly with the tides of social media. The Stoics remind us that true happiness comes from within, from cultivating virtue and wisdom, not from seeking the fleeting approval of others. You realize that social media, while offering some benefits, can also be a breeding ground for comparison, envy, and insecurity. You understand that teaching your child to ground their self-worth in something more solid, something internal, is crucial for their well-being. You gently guide them to find value in their character, their actions, their inner strength, rather than the ephemeral metrics of the digital world. You might feel overwhelmed by the challenges your children face, the pressures they endure. You might believe that shielding them from these external forces is the best way to protect them. But the Stoics offer a different approach, cultivating inner resilience by focusing on what we can control. Imagine your child struggling with a difficult situation, bullying at school, academic pressure, social anxieties. The natural impulse is to try to fix the external problem, to intervene on their behalf. But the Stoics invite you to shift your focus inward. While you can't always control the external circumstances, you can control your child's response to them. You can teach them to focus on their own thoughts, their own actions, their own character. You realize that true strength is not about avoiding adversity, but about developing the inner resources to navigate it. You understand that by focusing on what they can control, their effort, their attitude, their choices, your children can build a foundation of resilience that will serve them well throughout their lives. You are teaching them that their power lies not in changing the world, but in mastering their response to it. You might believe that success is defined by external achievements, high grades, prestigious universities, lucrative careers. You might think that pushing your children to excel in these areas is the ultimate act of love. But the Stoics challenge this conventional view, offering a more profound definition of success rooted in virtue and inner peace. Imagine your child struggling under the weight of expectations, the relentless pressure to achieve. They are constantly comparing themselves to others, feeling inadequate, anxious, and stressed. The Stoics remind us that true success is not about external validation, but about cultivating inner character. It's about striving to be a good person, to live with integrity, to act with kindness and compassion. You realize that focusing solely on external achievements can lead to a life of dissatisfaction and anxiety. You understand that true fulfillment comes from aligning your actions with your values, from living a life of purpose and meaning. You guide your children to redefine success, not as a destination, but as a journey of self-improvement and virtuous living. You might view failure as a setback, a sign of inadequacy, something to be avoided at all costs. You might instinctively try to shield your children from the pain of failure, but the Stoics invite you to reconsider its value, to see it as an essential tool for cultivating wisdom and resilience. Imagine your child experiencing a significant failure, a failed exam, a lost competition, a missed opportunity. They are discouraged, defeated, questioning their abilities. The Stoics remind us that failure is an inevitable part of life, a universal human experience. It is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced as an opportunity for growth. You realize that by analyzing their failures, your children can gain valuable insights into their strengths and weaknesses, their areas for improvement. You understand that failure can teach humility, perseverance, and the importance of learning from mistakes. You help them to see failure not as an end, but as a stepping stone on the path to wisdom and self-improvement. You might view sibling rivalry as a constant source of stress, a problem to be solved, a battle to be won. You might believe that creating perfect harmony between your children is the key to a peaceful household. But the Stoics suggest a different perspective, seeing sibling rivalry as a training ground for justice and fairness. Imagine your children constantly bickering, competing for your attention, arguing over possessions, and engaging in petty squabbles. The impulse to intervene, to mediate, to impose order is overwhelming. But the Stoics invite you to step back and observe, to see these conflicts as opportunities for your children to learn valuable lessons about justice, fairness, and conflict resolution. You realize that by allowing them to navigate these disagreements, you are teaching them to negotiate, to compromise, to empathize with others, and to stand up for what they believe is right. You understand that these skills are essential for success in all aspects of life. You guide them to approach their conflicts with reason, fairness, and a commitment to finding just solutions, recognizing it as a great lesson for when they will have to solve conflicts with other people. You might believe that understanding comes naturally, that everyone sees the world the same way you do. You might try to impose your own perspective on your children, expecting them to agree with your point of view. But the Stoics emphasize the importance of empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. Imagine your child struggling to understand someone else's actions, someone with radically different beliefs and background. They are quick to judge, to dismiss, to condemn. The Stoics invite you to encourage your child to step into the other person's shoes, to see the world through their eyes, to understand their motivations and perspectives. You realize that true understanding requires empathy, a willingness to see beyond your own biases and assumptions. You understand that by practicing empathy, your children can develop stronger relationships, navigate conflicts more effectively, and become more compassionate and understanding individuals. You remind yourself that acting virtuously means also trying to see from different perspectives. You might believe that a good parent protects their children from all hardship, shielding them from discomfort and pain. You might think that a life free of struggle is a happy life. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that discomfort is essential for growth and resilience. Imagine your child avoiding challenges, clinging to comfort, refusing to step outside their comfort zone. They are afraid of failure, of embarrassment, of the discomfort that comes with pushing their limits. The Stoics remind us that growth happens at the edge of our comfort zone, that strength is forged in the face of adversity. They teach us that by embracing discomfort, we can develop resilience, courage, and the ability to overcome obstacles. You realize that by protecting your children from all hardship, you are robbing them of the opportunity to develop these essential qualities. You understand that true strength comes not from avoiding discomfort, but from learning to navigate it with grace and courage. You gently encourage them to embrace challenges, to step outside their comfort zones, and to view discomfort not as a threat, but as an opportunity for growth. You might strive to create a life of ease and comfort for your children, shielding them from anything unpleasant or difficult. You might believe that minimizing discomfort is the key to their happiness, but the Stoics propose a different path, embracing temporary discomfort to build mental toughness. Imagine your child shying away from challenges, avoiding anything that might cause them stress or anxiety. They are prioritizing short-term comfort over long-term growth. The Stoics invite you to encourage your children to deliberately embrace temporary discomfort as a way to strengthen their minds and build resilience. This could involve anything from taking on a challenging project to volunteering for something outside their comfort zone. You realize that by intentionally exposing your children to manageable discomfort, you are helping them to develop the mental toughness they need to overcome future challenges. You understand that true strength comes not from avoiding discomfort, but from learning to navigate it with courage and resilience. You might believe that acquiring more possessions will bring happiness and fulfillment to your children. You might constantly strive to provide them with the latest gadgets, the trendiest clothes, and the most extravagant experiences. But the Stoics offer a different path, cultivating gratitude for what we already have. Imagine your child constantly wanting more, never satisfied with what they possess, always comparing themselves to others who have more. They are trapped in a cycle of consumerism, chasing fleeting pleasures that never truly satisfy. The Stoics remind us that true happiness comes not from external possessions, but from inner contentment. They teach us that by appreciating what we already have, we can break free from the endless cycle of wanting more and find lasting peace and fulfillment. You realize that by constantly providing your children with more and more things, you are inadvertently fostering a sense of entitlement and dissatisfaction. You understand that true happiness comes from within, from appreciating the simple things in life, and from cultivating gratitude for what we already have. You gently guide them to find joy in experiences rather than possessions, and to value the relationships and opportunities in their lives. You might believe that having more options and possessions is always better. You might strive to provide your children with every advantage, every comfort, every luxury, but the Stoics offer a different path, practicing voluntary simplicity to cultivate appreciation. Imagine your child surrounded by an abundance of toys, clothes, and electronic devices, yet still feeling bored, restless, and unfulfilled. They have lost the ability to appreciate what they have because they are constantly bombarded with stimulation and choices. The Stoics invite you to encourage your children to deliberately simplify their lives, to declutter their possessions, and to focus on experiences rather than material things. This could involve anything from donating unused toys, to spending more time in nature, to practicing mindful consumption. You realize that by intentionally reducing the amount of stuff in your children's lives, you are helping them to cultivate appreciation for what they truly value. You understand that true happiness comes not from having more, but from appreciating what we already have. You might believe that avoiding conflict is the safest course of action, that staying out of other people's problems is the best way to protect your children. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that moral courage, standing up for what's right, is a virtue worth cultivating, even in the face of adversity. Imagine your child witnessing an act of bullying, seeing someone being mistreated or unfairly targeted. Their first instinct might be to look away, to pretend they didn't see anything, to avoid becoming involved. The Stoics remind us that we have a moral obligation to stand up for what is right, to defend the vulnerable, and to speak out against injustice. They teach us that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in accordance with our values, even when we are afraid. You realize that by encouraging your children to develop moral courage, you are helping them to become responsible and ethical citizens. You understand that true strength comes not from avoiding conflict, but from standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult or unpopular. You gently guide them to find the courage to speak out against injustice, to defend the vulnerable, and to act in accordance with their values, even when it means facing potential consequences. You might believe that anger is a natural and justified response to injustice, that it is a powerful tool for defending yourself and others. You might encourage your children to express their anger freely and forcefully. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that inner fortitude, responding with reason rather than anger, is a sign of true strength. Imagine your child being provoked, insulted, or unfairly treated. Their first instinct might be to lash out in anger, to retaliate with insults or even violence. The Stoics remind us that anger is a destructive emotion that clouds our judgment, impairs our reasoning, and often leads to regrettable actions. They teach us that true strength lies not in succumbing to anger, but in controlling it, in responding with reason, empathy, and self-control. You realize that by teaching your children to manage their anger, you are helping them to become more effective communicators, more skilled problem solvers, and more resilient individuals. You understand that true strength comes not from expressing anger, but from controlling it and responding with reason. You gently guide them to develop inner fortitude, to cultivate self-control, and to respond to provocation with reason, empathy, and a commitment to finding peaceful solutions. You might believe that your children are entitled to a life of ease and comfort, that it is your responsibility to provide for all their needs and wants. You might shield them from chores, responsibilities, and any form of hardship. But the Stoics offer a different perspective. That responsibility, contributing to the well-being of the family and community, is essential for building character and purpose. Imagine your child expecting everything to be done for them, never offering to help, always demanding and never contributing. They are developing a sense of entitlement, believing that they are owed something without having to earn it. The Stoics remind us that true happiness comes from contributing to something larger than ourselves, from serving others, and from taking responsibility for our actions. They teach us that by embracing responsibility, we can find meaning and purpose in our lives and develop a strong sense of self-worth. You realize that by shielding your children from responsibilities, you are inadvertently fostering a sense of entitlement and hindering their development. You understand that true fulfillment comes from contributing to the well-being of others, from taking responsibility for our actions, and from living a life of purpose. You gently guide them to embrace responsibilities, to contribute to the family and community, and to find joy in serving others. You might believe that success comes easily, that talent alone is enough to achieve great things. You might try to shield your children from the struggles and frustrations that come with hard work. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that hard work, diligence, and perseverance are essential for developing character and achieving meaningful goals. Imagine your child giving up easily when faced with a challenge, avoiding tasks that require effort, and expecting instant gratification. They are missing the opportunity to develop the qualities of diligence and perseverance, which are essential for success in all aspects of life. The Stoics remind us that true achievement comes not from innate talent alone, but from consistent effort, unwavering dedication, and the willingness to persevere through challenges. They teach us that by embracing hard work, we can develop discipline, resilience, and a sense of accomplishment. You realize that by shielding your children from the struggles of hard work, you are inadvertently hindering their development and limiting their potential. You understand that true success comes not from avoiding effort, but from embracing it, from cultivating diligence and perseverance, and from finding joy in the process of striving towards a worthwhile goal. You might believe that keeping your children constantly busy is the best way to prepare them for success. You might fill their schedules with activities, lessons, and commitments, leaving little time for rest, reflection, or unstructured play. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that mindfulness, creating space for reflection, is essential for developing wisdom and inner peace. Imagine your child constantly rushing from one activity to the next, feeling stressed, overwhelmed, and disconnected from themselves. They are missing the opportunity to cultivate self-awareness, to reflect on their experiences, and to develop a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them. The Stoics remind us that true wisdom comes not from accumulating knowledge, but from reflecting on our experiences and learning from our mistakes. They teach us that by creating space for mindfulness, we can cultivate self-awareness, improve our decision-making, and find greater peace and fulfillment. You realize that by overscheduling your children, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to develop these essential qualities. You understand that true success comes not from being constantly busy, but from cultivating self-awareness, practicing mindfulness, and creating space for reflection. You might believe that happiness lies in the future, in achieving some distant goal or acquiring some coveted possession. You might constantly encourage your children to focus on what's next, to strive for something more. But the Stoics offer a different perspective. That true joy is found in the present moment, in appreciating the ordinary. Imagine your child constantly dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, never fully present in the here and now. They are missing the opportunity to appreciate the simple pleasures of life, to connect with others, and to experience the joy that is available to them in every moment. The Stoics remind us that the present moment is all that we truly have, that the past is gone and the future is uncertain. They teach us that by practicing present moment awareness, we can cultivate gratitude, reduce stress, and find greater joy in the ordinary. You realize that by constantly encouraging your children to focus on the future, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to appreciate the present. You understand that true happiness comes not from striving for something more, but from appreciating what we already have, from living fully in the present moment, and from finding joy in the ordinary. You might believe that technology is inherently good, that it is a powerful tool for connecting with others, accessing information, and achieving our goals. You might allow your children unlimited access to technology, assuming that they will naturally learn how to use it responsibly. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that technology, while offering some benefits, can also be a source of distraction, addiction, and unhappiness. Imagine your child spending hours each day glued to their screens, lost in the digital world, neglecting their studies, their relationships, and their own well-being. They are constantly bombarded with notifications, temptations, and distractions, making it difficult for them to focus, to think critically, and to develop self-control. The Stoics remind us that true happiness comes not from external sources, but from within, from cultivating virtue, wisdom, and self-control. They teach us that by managing our relationship with technology, we can reclaim our attention, improve our focus, and live more meaningful and fulfilling lives. You realize that by allowing your children unlimited access to technology, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to develop these essential qualities. You understand that true happiness comes not from escaping into the digital world, but from engaging fully in the real world, from cultivating meaningful relationships, and from developing inner strength. You might struggle to help your children navigate the constant distractions of modern life, the endless stream of notifications, the allure of social media, the temptation to multitask. You might feel powerless to compete with the forces vying for their attention. But the Stoics offer a different path, developing focus and discipline as a way to cultivate inner strength. Imagine your child constantly struggling to concentrate, flitting from one task to another, never fully engaged in what they are doing. They are easily distracted, unable to resist the urge to check their phones or browse the internet. The Stoics remind us that true strength comes not from eliminating distractions, but from developing the ability to manage them, to control our attention, and to focus our minds on what is truly important. They teach us that by practicing focus and discipline, we can cultivate inner strength, improve our productivity, and live more meaningful and fulfilling lives. You realize that by teaching your children to develop focus and discipline, you are giving them a valuable tool for navigating the challenges of modern life. You understand that true strength comes not from avoiding distractions, but from managing them, from cultivating self-control, and from focusing our minds on what is truly important. You might believe that you can control every aspect of your children's lives, that you can protect them from all harm, and that you can ensure their happiness and success. You might strive to create a predictable and safe world for them, shielding them from uncertainty and risk. But the Stoics offer a different perspective. that accepting uncertainty is essential for developing resilience and inner peace. Imagine your child struggling to cope with unexpected changes, feeling anxious and overwhelmed when things don't go according to plan. They are clinging to the illusion of control, believing that they can somehow control the uncontrollable. The Stoics remind us that life is inherently uncertain, that things will inevitably go wrong, and that we cannot control everything that happens to us. They teach us that true strength lies not in trying to control the uncontrollable, but in accepting what we cannot change and focusing on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, and our attitudes. You realize that by trying to shield your children from uncertainty, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to develop resilience and cope with adversity. You understand that true strength comes not from controlling the world around us, but from controlling ourselves, from accepting what we cannot change, and from focusing on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, and our attitudes. You might find yourself constantly worrying about things outside of your control: your children's futures, the opinions of others, the state of the world. You might feel overwhelmed by anxiety, struggling to find peace in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable. But the Stoics offer a powerful solution: focusing on our actions, taking responsibility for our choices, and living in accordance with our values. Imagine your child feeling helpless and powerless, blaming others for their problems, and avoiding taking responsibility for their own actions. They are caught in a cycle of victimhood, unable to see that they have the power to change their own lives. The Stoics remind us that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. They teach us that true freedom comes not from controlling the world around us, but from controlling ourselves, from taking responsibility for our choices, and from living in accordance with our values. You realize that by teaching your children to focus on their actions, you are empowering them to take control of their lives and to live with purpose and meaning. You understand that true strength comes not from controlling the world, but from controlling ourselves, from taking responsibility for our choices, and from living in accordance with our values. You might believe that avoiding conflict is the best way to maintain peace and harmony in your family. You might step in to resolve disputes between your children, imposing your own solutions and preventing them from learning to navigate disagreements themselves. But the Stoics offer a different perspective: that conflict resolution, learning to resolve disputes fairly and respectfully, is essential for building strong relationships and developing essential life skills. Imagine your children constantly arguing, blaming each other, and resorting to name-calling and aggression. They are unable to communicate their needs effectively, to empathize with each other's perspectives, or to find mutually agreeable solutions. The Stoics remind us that conflict is an inevitable part of life, that disagreements will arise, and that the key is not to avoid conflict, but to learn how to resolve it in a virtuous and constructive manner. They teach us that by developing skills in conflict resolution, we can strengthen our relationships, improve our communication, and live more peaceful and harmonious lives. You realize that by always stepping in to resolve disputes for your children, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to develop these essential skills. You understand that true peace comes not from avoiding conflict, but from learning to navigate it with wisdom, empathy, and a commitment to fairness. You might believe that emotions are the driving force behind conflict, that anger, frustration, and resentment are unavoidable and often justified. You might allow your children to express their emotions freely, assuming that this is the best way to resolve disputes. But the Stoics offer a different perspective: that reason, not emotion, is the key to finding fair and lasting solutions through dialogue. Imagine your children arguing, their voices rising, their faces flushed with anger, their words sharp and hurtful. They are lost in their emotions, unable to think clearly or to communicate their needs effectively. The Stoics remind us that emotions can cloud our judgment, impair our reasoning, and prevent us from finding fair and just solutions. They teach us that by cultivating reason, by approaching conflict with a calm and rational mind, we can communicate more effectively, understand each other's perspectives, and find mutually agreeable solutions. You realize that by teaching your children to use reason in conflict resolution, you are giving them a powerful tool for building stronger relationships and navigating the challenges of life. You understand that true peace comes not from suppressing emotions, but from managing them, from using reason to guide our actions, and from finding solutions through dialogue and understanding. You might believe that striving for perfection is the key to success, that pushing your children to achieve flawless results is the best way to ensure their future happiness. You might focus on their mistakes, their shortcomings, and their areas for improvement, hoping to motivate them to reach their full potential. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that self-acceptance, embracing imperfection, is essential for developing inner peace and resilience. Imagine your child constantly criticizing themselves, dwelling on their failures, and feeling inadequate and ashamed. They are trapped in a cycle of perfectionism, believing that they are only worthy of love and acceptance if they meet impossibly high standards. The Stoics remind us that perfection is an illusion, that everyone makes mistakes, and that true strength lies not in achieving flawlessness, but in accepting our imperfections and learning from our experiences. They teach us that by cultivating self-acceptance, we can break free from the cycle of self-criticism, develop greater self-compassion, and live more authentic and fulfilling lives. You realize that by focusing solely on your children's imperfections, you are inadvertently fueling their perfectionism and hindering their ability to develop self-acceptance. You understand that true happiness comes not from achieving perfection, but from embracing imperfection, from accepting ourselves as we are, and from living in accordance with our values. You might find yourself constantly criticizing your children, focusing on their flaws and shortcomings, and pushing them to improve. You might believe that this is the best way to motivate them and to help them reach their full potential. But the Stoics offer a different approach, practicing self-compassion, treating ourselves and others with kindness, understanding, and acceptance. Imagine your child beating themselves up after making a mistake, berating themselves for not being good enough, and feeling ashamed and worthless. They are treating themselves with harshness and cruelty, undermining their self-esteem and hindering their ability to learn and grow. The Stoics remind us that everyone makes mistakes, that everyone experiences suffering, and that we all deserve to be treated with kindness and compassion, especially when we are struggling. They teach us that by practicing self-compassion, we can cultivate greater self-esteem, reduce stress and anxiety, and develop a more positive and fulfilling life. You realize that by constantly criticizing your children, you are inadvertently teaching them to be self-critical and to treat themselves with harshness and contempt. You understand that true motivation comes not from self-loathing, but from self-acceptance, self-compassion, and a genuine desire to improve. You might believe that protecting your children from pain and suffering is your ultimate responsibility. You might try to shield them from difficult emotions, such as grief and loss, hoping to spare them from experiencing heartache. But the Stoics offer a different perspective. That navigating difficult emotions with resilience is essential for developing character and inner strength. Imagine your child experiencing the loss of a loved one, a pet, or a cherished dream. They are overwhelmed with sadness, anger, and confusion, struggling to cope with the pain of grief. The Stoics remind us that loss is an inevitable part of life, that suffering is unavoidable, and that true strength lies not in avoiding pain, but in learning to navigate it with courage, wisdom, and resilience. They teach us that by allowing ourselves to feel our emotions, by processing our grief, and by finding meaning in our experiences, we can grow stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. You realize that by trying to shield your children from difficult emotions, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to develop resilience and cope with adversity. You understand that true strength comes not from avoiding pain, but from embracing it, from allowing ourselves to feel our emotions, and from finding meaning and purpose in our lives, even in the face of loss. You might find yourself struggling to understand the purpose of suffering, questioning why bad things happen to good people, and feeling helpless in the face of your children's pain. You might try to distract them from their grief, to minimize their loss, and to reassure them that everything will be all right. But the Stoics offer a different approach, finding meaning in suffering, embracing acceptance, and using adversity as an opportunity for growth. Imagine your child feeling lost and hopeless, unable to make sense of their pain, questioning their faith, and wondering if life is worth living. They are searching for meaning in their suffering, but they are unable to find it. The Stoics remind us that suffering is an inevitable part of life, that it is an opportunity for growth, and that we have the power to choose how we respond to it. They teach us that by finding meaning in our suffering, by accepting what we cannot change, and by focusing on what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, and our values, we can emerge from adversity stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. You realize that by trying to shield your children from suffering, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to find meaning in it and to use it as an opportunity for growth. You understand that true resilience comes not from avoiding pain but from embracing it, from learning from it, and from using it to become a better person. You might believe that success is a competition, that you must constantly compare yourself and your children to others in order to measure progress and achieve your goals. You might encourage your children to strive to be the best, to outshine their peers, and you might believe that comparing yourself to others is a natural and necessary part of life, a way to motivate yourself and to measure your progress. But the Stoics offer a different path, focusing on personal growth, striving to become the best version of ourselves, and finding contentment in our own journey. Imagine your child constantly comparing themselves to their peers, feeling inadequate and insecure because they perceive others to be more successful, more talented, or more popular. They are trapped in a cycle of envy, unable to appreciate their own unique gifts and accomplishments. The Stoics remind us that true success comes not from outshining others, but from living in accordance with our values, from striving to improve ourselves each day, and from finding joy in the process of personal growth. They teach us that by focusing on becoming the best version of ourselves, we can break free from the trap of comparison, cultivate greater self-acceptance, and live more meaningful and fulfilling lives. You realize that by constantly encouraging your children to compare themselves to others, you are inadvertently fueling their insecurities and hindering their ability to find contentment in their own journey. You understand that true happiness comes not from being better than others, but from being better than we were yesterday, from striving to live in accordance with our values, and from finding joy in the process of personal growth. You might believe that giving your children everything they want immediately is the best way to make them happy. You might try to shield them from disappointment and frustration, fulfilling their every desire as soon as possible. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that teaching delayed gratification, the ability to resist immediate impulses in favor of long-term goals, is essential for developing self-control and lasting happiness. Imagine your child constantly demanding instant gratification, unable to resist the urge to have what they want right now, and feeling frustrated and disappointed when they have to wait. They are missing the opportunity to develop self-control, to learn the value of patience, and to experience the satisfaction of achieving long-term goals. The Stoics remind us that true happiness comes not from instant gratification, but from cultivating virtue, wisdom, and self-control. They teach us that by learning to delay gratification, we can develop greater self-discipline, improve our decision-making, and experience the satisfaction of achieving meaningful goals. You realize that by always giving your children what they want immediately, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to develop self-control and to appreciate the value of patience. You understand that true happiness comes not from instant gratification, but from cultivating virtue, wisdom, and self-control. You might believe that giving in to your children's every whim is a sign of love and acceptance. You might struggle to set boundaries, fearing that you will damage your relationship with them. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that building character through self-control, mastering impulses, is essential for developing inner strength and living a virtuous life. Imagine your child constantly giving in to their impulses, unable to resist temptation, and making poor choices that harm themselves and others. They are lacking the self-discipline and self-control needed to navigate the challenges of life. The Stoics remind us that true freedom comes not from indulging every desire, but from mastering our impulses, from living in accordance with our values, and from making choices that are in our best long-term interest. They teach us that by cultivating self-control, we can develop greater self-esteem, improve our decision-making, and live more virtuous and fulfilling lives. You realize that by failing to teach your children self-control, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to develop character and to make wise choices. You understand that true love means guiding them to develop the inner strength they need to live virtuous and fulfilling lives, and part of this is guiding them towards self-control. You might believe that telling your children what to do is enough to ensure that they grow up to be virtuous and responsible adults. You might focus on lecturing them about right and wrong, hoping that they will absorb your lessons and make good choices. But the Stoics offer a different perspective. That role modeling, living a virtuous life ourselves, is the most powerful way to influence our children and to instill in them a love of wisdom and virtue. Imagine your child observing your actions, witnessing your interactions with others, and absorbing your values, both consciously and unconsciously. They are learning from your example, even when you are not aware of it. The Stoics remind us that actions speak louder than words, that children learn more from what we do than from what we say. They teach us that by striving to live a virtuous life ourselves, by being honest, kind, compassionate, and responsible, we can inspire our children to do the same. You realize that your actions are constantly sending messages to your children, shaping their beliefs and influencing their behavior. You understand that the most effective way to teach your children virtue is to live a virtuous life yourself. You might believe that teaching your children virtue is a matter of lecturing them, telling them what's right and wrong, and punishing them when they misbehave. You might feel frustrated when they don't seem to listen, when they continue to make mistakes, and when they fail to live up to your expectations. But the Stoics offer a different approach, leading by example, showing your children the way through your own actions, and demonstrating the value of virtue through your own life. Imagine your children watching you navigate difficult situations, observing how you treat others, and witnessing your commitment to living in accordance with your values. They are learning from your example, absorbing your lessons, and internalizing your values, often without you even realizing it. The Stoics remind us that children are keen observers, that they learn more from what we do than from what we say, and that our actions have a profound impact on their development. They teach us that by leading by example, by living a virtuous life ourselves, we can inspire our children to follow in our footsteps, to embrace wisdom and virtue, and to become the best versions of themselves. You realize that your actions are the most powerful teaching tool you have, that your children are constantly learning from your example, and that by striving to live a virtuous life yourself, you can show them the way to a more fulfilling and meaningful existence. You might believe that shielding your children from all hardship is the best way to protect them, creating a bubble of comfort and security around them. You might try to prevent them from experiencing any pain, disappointment, or adversity. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that preparing for adversity, building mental and emotional resilience, is essential for navigating the inevitable challenges of life. Imagine your child suddenly facing a difficult situation, a serious illness, a family crisis, a significant setback in their career. They are overwhelmed, unprepared, and lacking the inner resources to cope with the stress and uncertainty. The Stoics remind us that adversity is an inevitable part of life, that challenges will arise, and that we must prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally to face them with courage, wisdom, and resilience. They teach us that by cultivating inner strength, we can navigate difficult times, learn from our experiences, and emerge stronger and wiser. You realize that by trying to protect your children from all hardship, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to develop resilience and cope with adversity. You understand that true strength comes not from avoiding challenges, but from preparing for them, from building mental and emotional fortitude, and from facing life's inevitable difficulties with courage and grace. You might feel overwhelmed by the challenges your children will inevitably face in their lives: illness, loss, disappointment, injustice. You might worry about their ability to cope, to persevere, and to find meaning in the face of adversity. But the Stoics offer a powerful antidote, providing them with the principles and tools they need to find strength and navigate life's challenges with wisdom and resilience. Imagine your child facing a moment of crisis, feeling lost, confused, and unsure of how to proceed. They are drawing upon the principles you have taught them, remembering the lessons you have shared, and finding strength in their own inner resources. The Stoics remind us that life is full of challenges, that suffering is unavoidable, and that our ability to cope with adversity depends on our mindset, our values, and our inner strength. They teach us that by embracing Stoic principles, focusing on what we can control, accepting what we cannot, and living in accordance with virtue, we can find peace, purpose, and meaning, even in the midst of chaos. You realize that by providing your children with a solid foundation of Stoic principles, you are giving them a powerful guide for navigating the challenges of life. You understand that true resilience comes not from avoiding adversity, but from facing it with courage, wisdom, and a commitment to living a virtuous life. You might believe that your primary responsibility as a parent is to ensure your children's individual happiness and success, focusing on their personal achievements and material well-being. You might overlook the importance of teaching them about their responsibility to contribute to the world, to serve others, and to leave a positive legacy. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that raising children to contribute to the world is essential for developing purpose, meaning, and lasting fulfillment. Imagine your child focused solely on their own needs and desires, disconnected from the world around them, and lacking a sense of purpose or meaning in their lives. They are missing the opportunity to experience the joy of serving others, to contribute to something larger than themselves, and to leave a positive impact on the world. The Stoics remind us that we are all interconnected, that we have a responsibility to care for others, and that true happiness comes from living a life of purpose and meaning. They teach us that by raising our children to contribute to the world, we can help them to develop a sense of compassion, empathy, and responsibility, and to find lasting fulfillment in serving others. You realize that by focusing solely on your children's individual happiness and success, you are inadvertently hindering their ability to find true purpose and meaning in their lives. You understand that true fulfillment comes from contributing to the well-being of others, from serving the world, and from leaving a positive legacy. You might believe that your role as a parent ends when your children reach adulthood, that you have done your job once they are independent and self-sufficient. You might fail to recognize the importance of passing on your wisdom, your values, and your experiences to future generations. But the Stoics offer a different perspective, that inspiring future generations, sharing our Stoic wisdom, is essential for creating a better world. Imagine your children carrying on your legacy, sharing your values with their own children, and contributing to the well-being of their communities. They are using the wisdom you have imparted to navigate the challenges of life, to make wise choices, and to inspire others to live virtuous and fulfilling lives. The Stoics remind us that we are all part of a larger chain, connected to those who came before us, and responsible for those who will come after us. They teach us that by passing on our wisdom, we can help to create a more just, compassionate, and flourishing world for future generations. You realize that your role as a parent doesn't end when your children reach adulthood, and that inspiring future generations is a vital task.